There's a snapshot quickly on the origin story of Glue as a follow-up to the last message. So originally we got started about 3 years ago. I was traveling. I was in, I think, Malawi at the time, actually on Lake Malawi. It's beautiful down there. So I was there in the middle of COVID, and I'd been traveling Africa for about 9 months at that point. And I mean, just the difficulty to get cash, to have cash, because there's inflation. Like, I think when I was there, they devalued the currency by 50% overnight. So in one night, everyone just had 50% less money. And that happens twice a year, basically. And the difficulty accessing ATMs, they do not have access to stocks. They do not have access to bonds. They can largely not own foreign currencies. It's just such an extreme difficulty for everyone who lives there. And so that was kind of the situation I was in. And I really started digging a lot more into DeFi. That was kind of DeFi summer. I'd been in crypto since back to 2015, right? Self-custody, all that stuff. And I really started digging in, but I realized super quickly that there was basically no chance that there was going to be significant adoption of it, just because it is so difficult to use. Like, I'm very techie. I've been in tech for a long time. I was in crypto for a long time. And it still took me weeks and weeks just to understand what DeFi is, what the point is. Everything is made so much more difficult by just the naming of everything, right? Like providing liquidity, like impermanent loss, like all these things just seemed so complex and so complicated. I was trying to figure them out, and it did take weeks. And actually, Ogle got me into a lot more of the DeFi stuff. He was super helpful, and that's why we ended up teaming up as well. I've known him for years and years before that. And so that was kind of the origin story, right? So we're like, hey, why is this so hard? Because if we want crypto to be the thing that really changes the world, it cannot be this difficult, right? Most people do not have the time and just the will, I guess, to try to figure out this completely new system where everything is kind of seems to be built to be as confusing and as complicated as possible, right? Again, just the naming drives me crazy. So that's a separate rant for another time, maybe. But so that's kind of where it started. And so Ogle and I were discussing, like, well, how can we build easier things? And obviously the first answer was like, well, let's just build DeFi that's easier on Ethereum. But we quickly realized, okay, sure, but like the wallet infrastructure wasn't particularly easy, right? Then if you ever did a transaction, you'd have to go to the block explorer to figure out what actually happened, right? If you lost the tokens, you were just totally screwed, because trying to figure out what the block explorer actually is, how the transactions work, right? It's all very, very complex. That's in addition to do bridging, right? It just felt like this was this very, very, very cool product that was very much developed for developers, and really the audience for it was developers and not retail. And so we pretty quickly realized, hey, it's going to be very difficult to, especially because this is not like ranting on Ethereum, right? I think just in general, crypto, it's very much culturally focused on providing an amazing product for developers. And I think we very much see that in how the product looks and feels and how it works. And so I think if we try to build something user-friendly on top of something that's really much more built for developers, we didn't feel it was going to happen, right? It felt like there would be too much of an uphill battle. It's kind of like even today, right? Linux, I mean, we're 30 years into Linux at this point, still super hard to use, right? Just because something ages and gets more adoption by developers doesn't mean it's going to become easier to use. And so that was kind of how we felt crypto had been moving and will likely continue to move. And we wanted to go a different direction, right? We feel a lot of the complexity isn't necessary. There is a lot of very much simplification that could be done. And that's kind of what got us started. So that's why we started to build from scratch, why we went with an L1 and the whole stack on top of it. And we're very excited to unveil a lot of it over the next few weeks. Thanks, everyone.